On August 6th and 9th, 1945, atomic weapons struck the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Surviving ground zero of one nuclear blast is an extreme statistical anomaly. Surviving both is nearly mathematically impossible. Yet a small fraction of the population did exactly that. Known as the niju hibakusha, or double survivors, these individuals endured incomprehensible physical trauma and the psychological weight of witnessing two separate ends of the world in a single week. Walking away from two nuclear detonations was not an accident of geography or timing. Beating those odds required a specific external intent. Takashi, a medical understudy, was at ground zero for both events. He witnessed the first blinding flash in Hiroshima, only to find himself standing in the center of the second strike in Nagasaki just 3 days later. Takashi's journey reveals that the atomic bombings were a massive, deliberate smokescreen. The chaos of the fire was used to awaken an ancient cosmic entity known as the Jirogumo, the spider. The first sign of this awakening appeared immediately after the Hiroshima blast. As the city lay in smoldering silence, the air itself stretched taut and thick, like a bowstring about to snap. Heavy, oily drops of black rain began to fall from a cloudless sky. This dark liquid clung to the survivors, feeling less like water and more like a warm, living substance sinking into their pores. Takashi's love, Aya, was caught in the downpour. As the black liquid mixed with the ash on her skin, she began to vomit a mixture of blood and a fire-laced bile that stained the cobblestones red. With her final breaths, Aya's eyes turned a flat, lifeless gray. She gasped a warning about the Jirogumo, whispering that the entire city was being watched through a network of invisible webs. This black rain left a physical and psychic residue on those it touched. For Takashi, the sensation was the start of a transformation, an internal weight that signaled he had been selected for a purpose he couldn't yet comprehend. The following morning, Takashi returned to Aya's burial site to find the grave completely level with the ground. Every trace of his labor from the night before had been smoothed away, and her body was gone. Pressed into the clay from inside the earth was a small, delicate handprint. It hadn't been dug out from above. The dirt had been pushed upward from within the grave, as if someone or something had reached out from the soil. Nearby, a trail of weightless, ashen footprints led away from the site. They barely touched the surface of the black ground and stopped abruptly in the center of the courtyard, as if the walker had simply continued into the empty air. Something had reached through the clay to claim the dead. Aya's body was harvested by a force operating within folded dimensions, pulled across a boundary that the living could not see. Shortly after, Takashi felt a visceral, gut-wrenching hook tighten around his intestines. It was a physical compulsion, a psychic leash drawing him southwest toward the coast. This tether acted as an invisible funnel, steering marked survivors onto the few functional trains. It prevented them from seeking safety, dragging them instead toward a second destination. Takashi arrived in Nagasaki and found his family, but as the warning sirens began to wail, the tether anchored him to the floor. He was paralyzed, held in place by a force that needed him exactly where he stood. The pull was not a survival instinct. It was a calculated leash anchoring the marked survivors directly to the entity's next feeding ground. At the moment of detonation, a wave of pure white light flooded the house. Takashi watched as his family was consumed by the flash, their bodies erased from existence in a single millisecond. Inside that blinding light, Takashi saw the Jirogumo. It was a vast, multi-dimensional monstrosity, feeding on the sudden release of energy and the mass death of the city. Standing in the ruins of a second city, Takashi felt a psychic connection snap into place. He became aware of the others scattered across the wasteland who shared his internal weight. There are exactly 160 individuals who stood at the center of both atomic bombings and walked away. These survivors now form an interconnected network, their lives woven together to create a massive geometric web across the Japanese archipelago. The 160 are not lucky. The atomic bombs were a cosmic catalyst to wake the spider, and these double survivors are its permanent anchors, living bait in a web that spans two ruined cities.